Hello and welcome to Lovely English Stories. Thank you for stopping by. This story is written for intermediate English learners. Ready? Let's get started. B1, B2 English Story. A Night in A&E. Fiona had taken the week off work to redecorate her spare room. Her employer had changed everyone's working arrangements, so they were now allowed to work 50% from home and 50% from the office. Fiona was overjoyed at the new contract because it meant she could get a dog, but it also meant she now had an excuse to redecorate her spare room and turn it into an office. She opted for an accent wall of dark green, some new plants, and a gorgeous adjustable desk, which meant she could choose to work stood up or sat down. She suffered from a back complaint, so this would make the world of difference to her. She also bought a fluffy rug, a blind for when it was sunny, and some lovely drapes to hang around the window. Her new office was going to be her haven. Fiona had received a delivery from a local furniture shop, and she had spent the morning assembling her new shelves. After she'd had her lunch and taken her new puppy for a walk, she decided to try and mount the shelves onto her new green wall. It was a big mistake. She was strong enough to do it, but she didn't have anything or anyone to steady her dad's old step ladders that she had borrowed. As she stretched and tried to attach the shelves to the wall with her drill, the small step ladder became wobbly. Fiona lost her balance and fell to the floor with a bang. Her new dog, Alfie, ran upstairs to check what all the noise was about. Once he knew something was wrong with Fiona, he started to bark. Fiona had landed awkwardly on the floor and, as she was waiting for her new carpet to be delivered, it meant she fell onto a hard surface and, all of a sudden, she was aware of searing pain through her right leg. As she tried to sit up, her chronic back pain kicked in and she struggled to move. She tried to calm Alfie down as he was making such a racket. Fiona laid on the floor and took some deep breaths. She tried to think of a plan. Her dad was coming to pick up the step ladders from her, but that wouldn't be for another few hours. She couldn't lay there for that length of time. She looked around and her phone was on the windowsill. Maybe if she slowly shuffled over, she could get it and call someone. As Fiona concocted her plan, Alfie started to get increasingly distressed again, as he could see she was in pain. He kept rubbing his nose into her neck and licking her face. "It's all right, Alfie. We'll work something out." Alfie ran off downstairs and continued to yelp and bark at the back door. Fiona looked up at her phone on the windowsill and started to shuffle as slowly as she could towards it. She was yelping in pain. She knew moving wouldn't help, But she needed to get help. While she was slowly starting to move, she heard Alfie barking louder and louder, and suddenly there was a noise downstairs. Fiona wondered if someone was trying to break in. Then she heard the voice of her neighbour. The relief flooded through her veins. Thank goodness! Sandra, is that you? I'm up here! Sandra came running up the stairs. Oh, bloody hell, love. What's happened? I knew something must be wrong because Alfie never normally barks like that. Good job I've still got your spare key from when you were on holiday. Sandra grabbed Fiona's mobile and called 999. She explained that she'd had a fall and was in pain. They advised her to lay flat on the floor and not move any more. It took 25 minutes for the ambulance to arrive. The two paramedics assessed Fiona and then decided to move her to the ambulance on a stretcher. They secured her head between two pieces of foam so she didn't move it. It was difficult to try and get her out of the house, but they managed it with the help of Sandra and her husband. Within 20 minutes, Fiona, Sandra, and the paramedics arrived at A&E. The paramedics checked Fiona in with the receptionist and gave them her details. They explained what had happened and what her vitals were. Her blood pressure was a little low. They also explained what painkillers they had given her and that she was allergic to penicillin. The paramedics then took Fiona into a cubicle, and Sandra went outside and called Fiona's mother to tell her what had happened. The A&E doctors and nurses started to perform lots of tests on Fiona. They concluded that she had fractured her pelvis and potentially her femur. Fiona couldn't believe it. She was young and healthy, apart from her dodgy back. This sort of thing only happened to elderly people. They told her that it wasn't about the height she had fallen from, but about how she had fallen on her hip. They sent for the porter to take her for an MRI scan to double-check that she had no other breakages or any internal bleeding. Fiona had never had an MRI scan before. It was a whole new experience. The radiographers took out her earrings as she wasn't allowed to have any metal on her body during the scan. They then asked her to lay as still as possible while the scan took place. It was not like Fiona had seen on the television. It was incredibly loud. Even the music on the nearby radio didn't drown out the sound. She laid as still as she could and hoped that her injuries weren't too serious. Then she started to worry about Alfie. She knew Sandra and her husband would look after him while she was in the hospital, but he hated to be without her. She also started to worry about her parents. They didn't live close by, and she didn't want them to travel such a long way, as they were quite elderly. Once the scan was over, Fiona was taken back down to A&E, where she was monitored by the nurses until her scan results were ready. The painkillers the paramedics had given her was starting to wear off. She began to feel dizzy and sick. She was about to ring her buzzer and ask for some assistance when the doctor on duty came to see her with an orthopedic surgeon. They explained that they had analysed her scans and it was a little worse than they originally suspected. Fiona had fractured her pelvis and had broken her femur. On top of that, her blood test results showed that she was low in vitamin D and iron, which could explain why she was feeling tired and sick lately. They arranged for her to have a vitamin infusion, and she was booked in to have surgery in the morning. The surgeon would operate on Fiona's femur to try and align it again. It would be fixed together with a small plate and some screws. Fiona was in shock. She was going to be like a bionic woman. They told her that she would need to take a couple of months off work and have someone to help her around the house. They explained the possible complications from the surgery, such as infection or blood clots, but they reassured her that this was rare. Fiona was most worried about Alfie, but she knew that Sandra adored him and would help when she could with walking him. Fiona hated relying on people. If only she'd waited and got someone to help her, then she wouldn't be in this position. The porter took Fiona to a ward where she would stay for the next few days. Her surgery was scheduled for 9 a.m. the next morning. She was nil by mouth until then. Even though she was in so much pain, she was starving. She didn't sleep well. The ward was noisy overnight, with people crying out in pain and machines whirring and bleeping. She felt exhausted. Then, at 8:30, a porter came to collect her and took her to the surgery. A nurse explained to her what was going to happen, and she signed some more forms. Then she called her parents. As she expected, they were incredibly worried and decided they were going to come and stay with her for the next couple of weeks. The time came when the anaesthetist came to put her to sleep. Luckily for Fiona, the operation went better than expected and only took a couple of hours. She was woken up in a little room by a nurse with a Scottish accent. Then suddenly she saw the faces of her parents peering over her. She drifted in and out of consciousness for the next few hours, and most of the day went by in a blur of nurses coming to check her blood pressure, her temperature, and her pain relief. She couldn't believe it when, the following day, the physiotherapists turned up and explained that they were going to make her stand up and sit in the chair by her bed. Fiona was terrified. Surely they wouldn't make her move so soon. But, without hesitation, they encouraged her up and out of her bed. She couldn't believe she managed to do it. The next day they came to see her. They made her walk to the end of her bed and back. The day after, she walked to the toilet and back. And by the 4th day, she was able to walk out of the ward and up the corridor a little bit. Progress! It was then that the consultant and surgeon came to see her again. They were happy with her progress, and she was told to get her things ready to be discharged. They would write to her in the next 7 days to give her details about her physio and another check-up appointment in 6 months. What a whirlwind the last few days had been! Fiona's mum and dad were there to help her to the car, and they picked up her painkillers from the pharmacy on the way out of the hospital. Fiona was so thankful to the staff at the hospital. They all worked so hard and got little to no thanks. She decided to buy them a big box of chocolates and some flowers from the hospital shop, and asked her dad to take her back to the ward so she could thank them. Fiona felt lucky to have access to the NHS. Now it was time for her to go home, rest, and let her parents look after her for a couple of weeks. She hoped she wouldn't have another trip to A&E anytime soon. Have you ever had to go to A&E? Tell us in the comments below. We hope you enjoyed this lovely English story. Thank you for stopping by. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. See you soon.